to Gooder Stories, where strategy meets heart. I'm your host, Gail Hataitham, founder of Gooder Creative Studio. This season, we're exploring the theme Small Team, Big Impact. How lean, passionate teams create lasting change in their communities. In each episode, I sit down with changemakers from across Canada's nonprofit world to uncover how they achieve big results with limited resources. This podcast is here to help you share your story with more clarity, creativity, and confidence. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Koole, Executive Director of the Recycling Council of Alberta, a nonprofit with more than 350 members working to advance waste reduction and the circular community across the province. Jennifer has a background in environmental science, spent years in municipal government, and even worked internationally as a zero waste consultant. She brings both technical expertise and real-world perspective to the conversation. She's passionate about connecting people and ideas to drive collaboration, spark innovation, and help communities, businesses, and policymakers rethink waste in a new way as something valuable that can help build a more sustainable future. In this conversation, we talk about how her team connects people and ideas to reimagine waste as a valuable resource, what it takes to communicate complex environmental issues in an inspiring way, and how collaboration fuels impact even with a small team. So let's get into it. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Gail. It's great to be here.
So let's start with your personal journey. You have worked in environmental science, municipal government, and even as a zero waste consultant. So what brought you into this role at RCA, and what keeps you excited about rethinking waste as a valuable resource?
Oh, thanks, Gail. My journey into environmental science started early, and I would say that my career kind of found me as opposed to me finding it, as it often does when you're in a purpose-driven kind of career. I grew up loving chemistry. I wanted to do chemistry everything. And then when I started to look at all the science fair projects that I did, when you get to pick whatever topic you want to dive into as a kid and spend some time looking at the science of it, I would do acids and bases. And then it led to an acid rain project, which led to an ozone layer project, which led to, much more in the environmental space. And when I was signing up for university, I was going into chemistry. And my mom goes, I think you like environmental science. And so she had kind of made the connections for me. So I ended up going to the University of Guelph, studying analytical chemistry in an environmental science degree. So I kind of combined both passions. And then during my university, I still loved chemistry and I was still quite good at it. But I realized that spending my days in a lab doing analytical work was not at all what my personality is like or what I wanted to do to kind of save the world, if you will. And so then, similarly to the science fair projects, it seemed that all my independent projects turned to waste management. So I was doing leachate studies, or I went to the University of Guelph and they were bringing in what was called the wet and dry program at the time. So they were the first people to separating garbage into what they called wet. So icky garbage. So anything that was food related or wet went into a green container. The blue was the dry recyclables, and then everything else went into your garbage. And so they were kind of the first ones to pilot that. And once I got a taste of that element, which was technically interesting, scientifically interesting, but also politically interesting, communications, like I was hooked. So I feel like waste and recycling jobs that have span all of those kind of elements of interest of mine that really made me keen to continue my career in waste management field.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
I think you asked what keeps me interested as well. And I really love efficiency, which maybe is due to my upbringing because my parents were very resource frugal, and it just kind of got into my personality as well. And so while I love waste as a career topic, I hate waste as a thing. So I really like to make sure that we're doing everything we can to maximize the usage of things or avoid, purchases or building things we don't need, and just really trying to find efficiencies out there. And so some people call that waste reduction or waste diversion or now circular economy, but I kind of see it as just being more efficient with what we have.
Exactly. So since you've been working at RCA, is there like a moment or story that stuck with you, like from your time working here?
Yeah. So I've been connected to the RCA for probably over 20 years. I moved from Ontario to Alberta in 2004 and joined the RCA pretty quickly. So I've been around the organization for a long time and love it and love what we've done to move recycling and to advance it in the province. And now I'm really excited to be at the helm as executive director as we kind of shift our focus and transition from purely waste diversion and recycling focus to the circular economy. So I've been around a long time, but only as executive director for the last almost 2 years, almost coming up to my 2 year anniversary. But yeah, so how do I pick just one thing that sticks out over those 20 years? But I thought maybe I would just reflect on my last 2 years. And one moment that really does stand out was at our Explore Circularity Day in 2025 in March. We held that in Edmonton. And we were exploring the topic of waste to energy and if incineration has a place in the circular economy. And I know lots of people think that that might be the silver bullet. Just, burn the waste, get the energy, continue on. And we did a presentation there on how really the a waste to energy model for dealing with waste is not part of the circular economy in that it's a stop as well. So circular economy, and I know we're going to get into this probably a bit more, but it's just keeping materials in use longer and in as much of its original form as possible. But when you get to waste to energy, you're breaking things down to its molecular components or gathering the energy. And then how do you capture that again and then bring it back into resources? And so it's really more of a linear process as opposed to what we're trying to say is the circular process for materials. And we were doing that presentation, and I did it a lot more eloquently than I just did right there. But someone in the audience came up afterwards and they said that the words that I had spoken and the examples that we had shown really changed the way that they were thinking. And it really made them revisit what they business model for their organization that they were building. And so that moment made me realize that what we do is having an impact, and if it's one person at a time, one message at a time, yeah, that it's important work. And it just really made me excited that the work that we're doing does and can have an impact. And it just, yeah, it stuck with me for sure.
Yeah, of course. Like it's the impact, right? Like, and sometimes it's hard to see it, but when someone come up and talk to you like that, it makes it more real and more connected to our why we're doing this.
In our business, we have a challenge because how do you measure something that doesn't happen, right? So if we want people to reduce or even reuse, we can measure a bit more. But if we want people to avoid something or refuse to take single-use materials at point of sale, how do we measure what doesn't happen? And so that was one way that someone conveyed to me that they changed their course and really they've decided not to do something that they were intentionally intending on doing. So um, that was also a special moment because how do we find out the impact that we're having if you can't measure it because you can't measure nothing?
Yeah, thank you for that. So we're gonna get a little bit more into a circular economy because as you kind of explain it a little bit, but I want the listeners who might not be familiar with this concept to understand what does circular economy means. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah, so circular economy is kind of a broad spectrum topic, and we look at it from that waste perspective. And in a circular economy, there is no such thing as waste. So if you think of natural systems, in nature, there is no waste. Anything that's a waste product becomes either food for some other organization or nutrients for the soil. And then, it's a circular system. So we want the economic system of humans to kind of mimic that circular system where there's no such thing as waste. So we like to say we keep materials in loops and not landfills, but that might not help explain what we're all about either. What's a loop, right? And so I'll just maybe share a few ways to think about materials in a way that, for us, we call it circular economy, but really it might just be straightforward for some of the listeners. So really, yeah, I've said it a few times already, but keeping materials and products in use and intact for as long as possible and as many times as possible. So with as little change as possible. It's extracting the value out of something multiple times. So this thing has a value as A, and then it has another value, 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 value. So keeping that value in that material or product as long as we can and as many times as we can. And so the circular economy has a diagram that many academics or others reference, and it's called the butterfly diagram. And it's quite complex and yeah, confusing if you ask me. But anything that is a system is complex and confusing. So it's not a fault of the diagram or the system, but we tried to take that and we found another tool that we use called the R ladder, which is more of a linear kind of hierarchy that shows the um, priority or the preference of an action for that to how to manage a material. So at the top is like refusing, talked about that, then reuse, then reducing. Even if you're using something, can you use less of it? It goes down to repair, refurbishing, remanufacturing. And it's called the R ladder because all of those coincidentally start with R. And then at the bottom of the R ladder is where recycling and recovery. So we talked a bit about energy recovery earlier. So that's where they land. So they're parts of the circular economy, but they are really kind of the management tool that we want to use at the very end of life of a material. So we want to make sure that we are prioritizing all the other things on the R ladder first. And then within that R ladder, we have different priority levels. So short loops are at the top, medium loops, and then longer loops. And the shorter the loop is, the short is referencing the time it takes for that material to get back to its original form. So by refusing or reducing or reusing it, it stays intact. So those are the shortest loops. And then you go down to the bottom, which are the longest loops. And so the materials that get, say, recycled, they have to be broken down into different physical or chemical parts and then reassessed and then manufactured into something else again. So recycled into something new. And so it may not become that same material. So that's why those are the longer loops. So we try and talk about the circular economy in terms of those priorities for management of a material. And we try and encourage and promote the ones with the shorter loops.
Thank you for explaining that. I'm just thinking about maybe like a simple example. Like for example, if I refuse to buy a new shirt, I'll buy a used T-shirt. So that's first step, and then I keep repair it a few times or upcycle it. So when it's all upcycle it, maybe cut it down and then sew it into like a bathroom towel. So that's another use for it without changing much of the material. And then after that, I don't know, maybe it could or could not get recycled into a new material.
Yeah,
Would that,
that's
yeah.
perfect. And thank you. That's a great example where you've hit a lot of the management tools on that R ladder with one simple product, like your shirt in your example. So yeah, do you need it? So you're going to, like you said, refuse it. Then you may have in the past wanted to buy 10 of the same, but maybe different colors. So now you're only going to buy one. So now you've reduced the amount that you're consuming. and then you wear it lots. Did you know there's a statistic that says that the average piece of clothing is only worn 7 times? So, so maybe you have a favorite t-shirt there that you're wearing many more than 7 times. So then you're reusing it, reusing it, which is keeping it in the economy. It still has multiple value touch points for you. And then, oh, okay, it's your favorite, and then it gets a hole in it, but you've figured out how to repair it or maybe patch it, and now it's cool and it's upcycled, as you say. Then when you're done with it, maybe it becomes a cleaning rag, or maybe you donate it to a thrift store. Then somebody else may have life if there's still a valuable life in that material. And if not, maybe it gets recycled, or maybe some of if it's 100% cotton could get composted, depending on what the material of that shirt is. So that is a great example. Thank you for that.
No problem. So when it comes to changing how people think about waste and recycling, what kind of stories or like what kind of messages that you find resonate most with the people, and how can you adjust them like when you have like different group of audience?
When we do our presentations, we really try to figure out who the audience is and make sure that any examples that we use are relatable and that they can see themselves in. And we are a member organization, so we don't speak to the general public. It's not our priority. We try and support our members who do talk to the general public, so municipalities or others in the business. So we're one removed from kind of the general public, but we really try and work with whatever industry or group that we're speaking to make sure that they can see themselves in the examples that we share. And we do have a large membership, about 350. And one great way that we like to make sure that our stories are relatable is by sharing what's actually going on and showcasing our members and all the good work that they're doing. So, I can talk about the theory or the academics or the R ladder tool. But really, when it comes down to it, what does it really mean? Who's involved with it? It sounds too big and scary, like people won't relate to it. So how do you bring it down to an actual tangible example? So we like to go on tours and showcase on social media or at our conferences. We like to make sure that our members have a voice. One particular example, we have a member that's North Star Clean Energy, and they're working to take single-use shingles, break them down into their constituents, and then they work to separate the shingles into those 3 components, and then they use the asphalt bitumen back into making shingles again. So that's one example of what a member's doing to actually promote circular economy. And then we have one of our newest members is the Calgary Toy Library. We're recording this podcast around Christmas time, and I know lots of people are out in the malls shopping for toys. And maybe a way to think about how many toys you need is like, do you need them? Do you need to own them all? I guess is a thought process that we'd like for people to consider. And if you don't need to own it, maybe there's a way to share it. And this toy library is a great example of how many people can enjoy toys together. And by signing them out, it's a lending library. And then as kids grow and grow out of certain toys, they can move on and get used by other people. So we like to make sure that our stories are relatable, that we find examples that are real in the community, and that we really are championing our members as well.
Those are really cool stories. I love that. So because your organization has such a big reach, like for the whole province, and you run a lot of major events, but yet like your team just seems a little relatively small. How do you manage to get so much done? How do you work collaboratively like with each other?
Yeah, our team is super small. We have 2 employees, and then we have contractors that help us out. And in terms of our comms team, we have a superstar team of 2 people. We have someone that supports us from a strategic comms perspective, and then what I call more tactical. Not sure if that's the right word, but someone that helps us with our graphics, our social media posts, making our newsletters, just helping to actually put all our ideas into action and getting it out there to, as you say, get a broader reach. So I'm based in Calgary, but you're right. The reach of our organization is all across Alberta. So it takes a strong comms team to make that happen. And since I've been executive director, that's really been a strong focus that we've had is how to be seen more and how do we make sure that people know all the good work that's going on in the circular economy space. And then how do we attract, new members that are involved in this and share and align with our purpose and our values. And so that's been a real priority for us. And how we do it is by having, specific goals. And we've set an annual strategy, try to adhere to it as much as possible. We have, a small team, but they're competent. We divide and conquer. We don't just leave, oh, that's not my job. Like all of it is our jobs. And we have weekly meetings or regular meetings where we check in with each other and it's an open place to share ideas. It's not just, oh, Jen says this. It's an open collaborative process, and we are also willing to try things. We'll try this new way of communicating something. Oh, that worked, that didn't, or this resonated with that audience, but not that. Or, oh, we got lots of interactions on that post, but not another one. So we're willing to kind of get that feedback loop. And even though we start with a plan, we may have to deviate from that plan to adjust. And we have, like I said, a super stellar comms team that, are very competent, but they are also passionate about circular economy things. And they've also been around the Recycling Council of Alberta for a long time. So they know who we are. They share the same values. And they personally also are invested in making sure that those messages get out. So I think all of those really help us to do a lot with a little.
Exactly. All the right combinations. That's awesome. So, Jennifer, you are really passionate about connecting people and ideas. Can you share maybe a recent project where collaboration created more impact than working alone?
Yeah, so one of the things that the Recycling Council of Alberta is famous for is our conference. So we have an annual conference that, many people look forward to every year. It just happened in October and we already have people asking about signing up for next year. So it's something that people really look forward to. And one of the big reasons I think is because it is a spot that we bring people together. And we work really hard to curate valuable people that are sharing their messages on stage or, just thought leaders in the circular economy space. But we've heard it over and over again that the networking component of our conference, bringing all the people together that are working in this same space together, is really where the magic of that event happens. And we had about 379 people up in Jasper at our recent conference. And this year was no different in that the conversations that were had on the side or the connections that were made with people on stage versus people in the audience, they just keep coming. All these wonderful examples of how people are finding each other at our events to collaborate with each other. And one specific example we had a keynote speaker from Space Copy on stage, and she's a young inspirational leader and looking at how to use lots of different materials into digital printing. And it's called Space Copy because she has, brought her business up from like NASA type outer space materials, including like lunar sand. But how it applies to us is that it could go into very remote communities to support making things out of things that are already in that environment or where it's hard to reach. So at disaster debris locations or the far north Arctic or remote communities. And after her presentation, there were some people from the Jasper municipality in the room who stuck up their hand and they're like, we have these problems. And I think your approach to making things out of things that may not have been readily identified as an input really resonated with them. Just finding those ways that groups can collaborate and look at how to explore or pilot different projects or solve each other's problems. That's kind of the magic of the Recycling Council of Alberta. And it's kind of the magic, really, that we bring to our annual conference. There's just, yeah, so many specific examples that come out of that one event.
Yeah, you kinda be the bridge for all these organizations or all the people that are working toward the same cause, right? That's awesome, yeah. I need to check out that conference one of these days.
We would love to have you. The 2026 conference is the 2026 conference is going to be in Lake Louise in October. Yeah.
Yeah. So being in this role, the leader role, what have you discovered about leading and communicating, and how do you balance your the purpose with the practicality of it all?
One of the biggest things I've learned about leading and communicating in this mission driven organization is that, people aren't just showing up for a job. And I kind of talked about that with our comms team. They show up because they care and they want to invest in the outcome. It's not because, like I said, Jen said so, or the board put this on my priority list. It's because they really care. So, really have to make sure that, yes, we have tasks, we have deadlines, but how do we make sure that people are feeling fulfilled and able to share themselves in this role and make sure that it connects to their why they are involved and the why of the organization as well. And so that's really been something that is a little different than maybe some of the spaces that I've worked in before. So, really trying to make those value driven connections for the team and then, for our broader membership, because the memberships is just an extension of our team. We're only as strong as our members. Yeah. So, one of the things that I think, nonprofits and mission driven organizations get caught up with, or at least we do, is the shiny objects. So there's always something exciting happening or someone's doing something really cool. Let's chase that. Let's try that. And we get a little caught up in that sometimes, and rightly or wrongly, sometimes it's a good distraction. Um, but one of the things that I like to try to do to keep it more practical is what I call a touchstone. Always try and bring it back to a touchstone. So when we find ourselves out chasing some shiny objects, let's bring it back to what is on our 5-year strategic plan. What are our goals? What are the KPIs that we're trying to reach? Is this shiny object going to help us achieve that? Is it distracting us from what's on our plan? Is it something maybe we should do later, or maybe we can do in collaboration with or share in a different way? So it's kind of the passion that helps us, get excited and explore different things. But then the practicality side is like, okay, what's in our box for this year? And is this helping us get there?
Yeah, it's always important to kinda go back to those objectives, like, or do we need this right now? It's very important because I know that you probably work with, like, limited budget and all that. So
Exactly. I'm all notorious for saying that. Like, if someone brings me a cool idea, I'll be like, we can do anything, but we just have to make sure that we have the budget for it, or make sure that we find a sponsor that will support us in doing it. Some shiny objects we need to chase, and then find the right way to make them happen.
so what would be one piece of advice that you would give to other nonprofits trying to communicate complex issues and connect with their audiences in a meaningful way?
Yeah, this is something I learned from a friend that is also in the nonprofit space. And I think we get caught up sometimes in trying to get to the perfect outcome. We want to save the world. There's only one right way to do something. And, he shared with me, he's like, just meet people where they are and find out what you can add to that to get one step closer to your goals. So don't think if it's not perfect, it's not right. Meet people where they are at in terms of their environmental journey. So if they're at the point of, they've changed all their ways to get rid of every single use plastic in their life, then that person is at a different point than someone that doesn't even understand maybe why microplastics might be something that they want to avoid in their life. So then, or maybe they don't even care about anything kind of in that environmental sphere, and then you try and make it relatable to something that is of interest or passion to them, and that would be like, health or family or um, free time or global impact concerns. So trying to just find where people are at and then share your message that's just a little bit beyond that, but not always going to the full extent.
Yeah, such a great advice. Thank you. So, thinking about the next few years, what's one shift that you would love to see in how Albertans or Canadians think about waste?
Um, so many, but just listening to my own advice, meet people where they're at and take them one step further. But was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I was at a conference and one of the speakers challenged us with this comment. They're like, what if our waste is our economic advantage? And I would just love it if people stopped looking at waste and as something that is an economic advantage. Like, what can you do with that seemingly waste object to extract more value out of it? So, Facebook Marketplace is a great example. It's not people selling garbage, it's things that they know still have a value and that they want to get a monetary value out of it, but they know that somebody else is going to value it for its utility, right? So they want to share that forward. So I would love that prevailing attitude to seep into other aspects of people's lives and really tackle that kind of convenience is king culture and more focused on one member we have is called Sustainable. And what they do is they make cookie mixes out of, and one of the main ingredients in it is a spent grain coming from the brewery process. So the grain's been used, it's been spent, it's been utilized to make great beer, but it still has a lot of protein, it still has a lot of fiber, it still has a lot of flavor, it still has a lot of value and nutritionally, so this company is like, hey, I know we can mix that with all the cookie ingredients and chocolate chips and package it, and then it becomes cookies. So, yeah, lots of organizations, they might be focused on their kind of linear manufacturing process. And then what comes out at the end as a byproduct or a waste, somebody else's linear manufacturing process is like, that's an input for me. And now we're closing that loop.
Yeah, it's about like rethinking and connecting the dots, and like you said, like connecting the right people to each other, which sometimes we don't even know that existed. Like
Absolutely.
sometimes we need some guidance to do that, and I guess you guys would be a good resource for a lot of organizations looking for a partnership in that area, that like how can we work together to reduce waste and still make profits and maybe even make more profits because of
Absolutely.
using the resource that's not a brand new material, right?
You've absolutely got it. So hopefully I was able to explain what the circular economy is in this podcast, and that sounds like you've really learned the principles of it and have some ideas on how to apply it.
So before we wrap up for this new season, I ask my guests if they have any question for me or for Good Day Creative. Do you have a question for me?
As I was doing this podcast, Gail, I'm thinking, I'm in the environmental space and, that's my world, right? That's kind of how we see things and we're communicating. And, how do we talk about climate change or how do we talk about waste reduction? How do we talk about circular economy? And I was thinking that you must talk to so many people in so many other avenues of doing good in the world, the nonprofits involved with health space or social enterprises, things like that. I'm wondering what you've heard from other guests that might be different for great tips and tricks for communicating our messages. We're all passionate, we all have purpose, but what might be different for an environmental organization than others?
I would say all the different causes, they have their unique challenge in what they're facing. So for environmental nonprofits like yours, you basically fighting for the rivers, the forests, the things that can't really speak for themselves. And a lot of time, the problems in the environmental area, they just happen slowly and more conceptual. Like they're visible, but they're not as obvious. It's a really, really big challenges for you guys to get people involved. And a lot of time, it involves the policy change. It involves something bigger, like the systematic shifts. And it's often get really political. And sometimes people don't want to talk about it. So I don't want to really compare, but in general, like there's always kind of like the similar rules or similar strategies for communications and marketing. But I'm gonna talk more about like maybe what another environmental nonprofit can be beneficial from. Like for example, make it personal, which applies for almost every organization as well, because you don't want to talk too much of the theory or the idealism of, for example, like the planet as a whole, but maybe you can get more specific, like a story about this park, this river, this community well-being, or something more specific that it would be easier to connect and to tell story. Another thing that I think most organizations can benefit from is to celebrate all the little wins. All the little wins, especially like the environmental work, it takes time. It's hard to see the long-term effect, but spotlight all the little, maybe policy victory, maybe anything measurable improvement that you see, celebrate that. So people always feel the hope. Like I always feel like it's very gloomy, especially in the environmental area, but people need hope to make the impact. Maybe find like align values, talk about your shared values, maybe talk about what are we leaving for our children, which is my kind of my why, because it's really impacted me when I have my daughter and think about, okay, what kind of the world are we leaving behind for them? And that kind of drives my passion toward the environment and other causes, you know? So we want to make a better world, but like we can focus on like little things. How can we connect the values that we have in the audience and we can tell those stories? Another advice would be like maybe you can find some unexpected allies, some smaller people like maybe farmers or maybe outdoor enthusiasts, more human kind of like put into faces, and their voices maybe can reach people better than like a voice from say like an environmentalist.
Those are great advice. I wrote something.
Yeah, something like that. So the last one would be like, because a lot of things is like, especially on a policy level, is seem invisible. So maybe invest in like good design, good visual, good infographic, and all those things that be able to communicate and reach people in a simpler way. Break it down, make it easy, because you're not talking to just people at the higher level. I feel like all the change would have to come from everyone, especially the general audience.
This is great. Thank you. This is why you're having these podcasts. It's amazing. Share those insights and see what's happening and how we can make it better. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for our lovely conversation, especially all your stories, all your effort. Like I can feel a lot of passion and heart from you and from your team. And I think it gives us hope that like one idea, one connection, one team, one person, we can all make a difference. We can make what seemed impossible possible. For the listeners, if you would like to learn more about Recycling Council of Alberta, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, so we have a great website at recycle.ab.ca. We have a very active LinkedIn. So Recycling Council of Alberta, we would love to have you follow us there and follow all the things that we're doing and all the people that we showcase. We're also on Instagram and Facebook, but LinkedIn is our most active platform to follow us on.
Awesome. And for any listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Good Stories. If you enjoy our conversation, be sure to follow and subscribe and share it with someone who's working to make a big impact with a small team. And that's a wrap on another Good Story. Until next time, keep making stories worth sharing. Bye.
Thanks, Gail. Bye.